Hi, this is V. This is a reaction to the reaction video posted by Doug from Otaku Grave about my video where I'm discussing Rei being walked in on by Shinji after she comes out of the shower. And I've got to say, Doug is entirely right. Going back listening to my first video, I emphasized it a bit too much. I made it sound like I was saying it's a satire, like something out of Airplane or Martian Success from Nadesco. And what I meant was, it's playing with the tropes of the giant robot genre and putting a twist on them satirically, but it's not a pure straight-up satire scene. It's the scene actually has 2 points. The first one I actually said in the last video. One, it's establishing Rei has no concept of human social conventions, very little, and it's twisting the tropes of the giant robot genre while it does that. And what Doug pointed out was, second point of the scene focuses on that at this point early in the story, Rei's entire world revolves around Gendo. She's entirely focused on Gendo, and those are the 2 points of the scene. However, there's one thing that Doug didn't really seem to agree with, was my point about Rei and eye contact, that Rei doesn't really make eye contact that much earlier in the series, and she does later in the series as she grows as a person more, compared to how Rei's whole story arc is like the Blade Runner replicants, how they become a person more as they grow and experience more things. But the eye contact thing he didn't really seem to agree with, so I'm going to walk you through this, because if I can assuage my geek pride a little that I didn't address the Gendo part in the first video, it's notice that I called my first one Shinji's relationship with Rei provisional video. It wasn't a full analysis. I just meant it as a quick answer to the question, was this played as a romantic scene, yes or no? And I was saying no, it's not really meant to be romantic, but I didn't really go into it in detail. So, by the way, I really like Doug's point, because he used a picture of the rebuild scene, but it's in there in the original too, that after Shinji falls on Rei, light hits a glass of water and it makes a rainbow. This happens in the original. And that conceivably could be her AT field, because we know she can make one because she has the soul of Lilith. I don't think it's literally supposed to be that, because we see there's a reason for it happening, the light hitting a glass, but I think it could be foreshadowing or symbolizing that. I'm hesitant to do anything that doesn't have solid fact. It could just be them foreshadowing that. But, that's a pretty good point. I can see how they could be foreshadowing that. Because the rainbow thing isn't with the angels in the original. So, they only started doing that in a rebuild, so might be foreshadowing that. But really, the full thought, because it was just a provisional video and I went on a tangent when I was explaining the eye contact thing, the full thought is Rei avoids making direct eye contact unless she absolutely has to. Now, I compare it to actually, in all seriousness, when Spock raises an eyebrow. The explanation letter Nimoy gave was, he was watching a Belafonte concert, and the guy stays completely still for about an hour, and then just raises his hand. And it's like an earthquake, he said, when on stage. It was just so startling, such a simple motion after being so still. And Spock is a very logical and emotional guy, and he's very stone-faced. So the subtle motion of just, he raises his eyebrow when something really startles him, he doesn't actually do it that much. When he does, you can tell he's really intrigued. And I directly compare this to when Rei actually does make eye contact with something. It's like when Spock raises an eyebrow. She does it. It's like when Silent Bob actually talks for dramatic effect. Although that extends to Rei speaking as well, but not as much. She at least talks once or twice an episode. But she does make eye contact kind of rarely. But episode 11 is the turning point. But you know what? I'll walk you through it. Episode 1, she's not really that coherent. She's just bandages and it's literally bandage porn. Then episode 2, however, she's looking at Shinji because he's the one that saved everyone. But for most of this, like in the school scenes, for example. See, this is Rei in episode 3 at school. She's just looking out the window, oblivious to everything. Even when the entire classroom erupts, when everyone realizes that Shinji's the pilot of Eva 1, and everyone crowds around Shinji, she doesn't even acknowledge it. She's just staring straight out the window. She does, however, come and look straight at Shinji when she comes and says, oh, there's about to be an angel attack. More on that later. But even in episode 4, when it's raining, she just looks out the window again. But the big thing is also episode 4. Gendo and Ritsuko are talking about how, oh, it's going to be dangerous, that without Shinji we'll have to reconfigure Eva 1 for Rei, and it might be dangerous for her, and she just doesn't even bat an eye. And also, look, episode 5 now, she just sits apart from the other girls. It's when they're swimming, doesn't even interact, just off in her own little world, staring off into the distance. But the big thing here is the scene where Shinji walks into her apartment. Now, notice that, again, this is something that grabs her attention. The Gendo's glasses mean everything to her. So, because she doesn't understand social conventions, she doesn't look at people, but also the Gendo's glasses are so important to her that she'll walk right up to Shinji naked, not even caring, annoyed, and she walks straight up and tries to rip them off of his head without even being concerned that she's naked or anything. Also notice that Shinji then falls right onto her boob. And I point this out because this was the first scene when it aired on Adult Swim that they cut out that shot of his hand on there. I think censorship is stupid, but that was the first scene they edited out, and we could tell they were going to change a few things. But basically, then, really, my entire argument about eye contact, which I'd make for you, Doug, is encapsulated in the escalator scene. I mean, I'm going to mention everything because I want to be comprehensive, but the whole thing for me, it's in the escalator scene that Rei's having a running conversation with Shinji, but she's standing in front of him and doesn't look back at him. She's just staring straight forward, not bothering to make eye contact most of the time. Rei doesn't make eye contact when she's speaking to people unless she absolutely has to, or she's very interested or intrigued, like Spock raising an eyebrow. Because notice then, she's staring straight forward, not noticing him. Well, noticing she's not looking at him, but then as soon as he badmouths Gendo, she turns, looks straight at him, and slaps him across the face. So she'll make eye contact if mostly things relating to Gendo, such as the glasses, for the time he saved her. And you mentioned if you didn't know if they popped up again. Yes, you notice it's very quick. She actually brings him into the entry plug with her, and this is episode 5, as a good luck charm of sorts, and she even looks at them when she's not doing anything. She'll look right at the glasses, because it's her good luck charm, reminds her of Gendo. And she will, look straight at Shinji when she has to speak to him to give him orders about something after he gets out of the hospital. But again, that entire conversation they have right before they get into the battle, when she's silhouetted by the moon, she doesn't even look at Shinji in any of that entire scene. She's just looking straight forward or looking away and just speaking to him without making eye contact. By the way, I was going to put some shots from Rebuild in here because when you analyze this, you use the Rebuild shots. Actually, she's only holding the glasses in this scene in Rebuild. They added that in Rebuild, that she's holding the glasses in this particular moon scene. She's not holding them in the original one. I think it's good that they added that into Rebuild. It just reinforces that she takes them with her. But I've decided not to use that because the Federales are on to me for Kara's really clamping down on using shots from Rebuild and stuff, so I think it would be better if we avoided using those. But she doesn't make eye contact with him in that entire scene. But then when he saves her at the end, paralleling how she looked at Gendo when Gendo came in to save her, she looks at Shinji when he comes in the entry plug, and she's almost confused, what are all these emotions coming over me? And she looks straight at him, but no, she doesn't like making eye contact. She's nervous. She just doesn't show it. She looks away as soon as she can because she doesn't like looking straight at things, but then looks back to smile. So really, before episode 11, she really makes an effort not to make eye contact with people. She either doesn't want to because she's nervous. I'm not sure if she's nervous inside and feels anxiety, or is it just she doesn't understand the social convention. I think it might be a mixture of both. But then again, you see her in episode 7 when all the boys are clustered around the window looking at Misato, coming for a parent-teacher night, and the girls are yelling at the boys, like Akari there. Rei's just looking away, completely disinterested. Again, in episode 9, when Misato asks Rei to do the Dance Dance Revolution thing, Rei acknowledges her without looking directly at her. Now, another big thing in episode 9 is when, at the beginning of the episode, when Asuka wants to get Rei's attention, she stands in such a way that her shadow falls on Rei's book, and because she wants to prod Rei to say hi to her. but Rei just moves the position of her book a couple of times before having to acknowledge that Asuka's there. And she does, because Asuka kept pushing her to get a reaction, eventually she does look right at Asuka and say, what's going on? But then she immediately looks right back at her book. She will only look right at you if you really prod her to. And it took Asuka a couple of efforts to get her to, and then she looks away again. But notice here, like, Asuka's standing there, she's looking straight at her book, she's refusing to make eye contact. And she just says, oh, if I'm ordered to, I will. Not making eye contact. It's not something she does. Then again, in episode 10, when they're getting their orders to go into the volcano, she's looking straight forward. Asuka says something to her, she keeps looking forward. So before episode 11, she rarely makes eye contact, except the one or two times it's something that really grabs her attention, or if like Asuka really prods her. And it's part of her overall body language and important for being Rei, to understanding, what is Rei, that she has to not make eye contact. But episode 11, which doesn't even focus on Rei that much, I hate it when people skip the fairly standalone episodes 10 through 13, because they get a lot of character development and they drop hints about things that happen later, that there's no such thing as a standalone Eva episode. That you understand things better by watching the standalones, because they're not really standalone. Anyway, in this one, you see when they're walking around, and it's the scene where Rei goes, wait a minute, Gendo doesn't think I'm great because I'm Rei, he just likes me for being Yui. So she looks at people in episode 11. She looks straight at Asuka when Asuka says that. Just casual throwaway dialogue. She'll even just look at Asuka when they're talking in the hallway there about, hey, where's the shortcut? Even when people aren't talking to Rei, when Asuka's having a conversation with Shinji, Rei will start looking at them. Or when Shinji is talking to Asuka in the air ducts, Rei will start looking at Shinji's direction. Now, the problem is, long story short, a different animation studio had to do episode 11 because they were running short. So the normal Gainax people didn't animate episode 11. That's like why it looks different. So I'm not really sure, how much of the script, the storyboards, or the other studio was responsible for or not. They didn't write the script. Gainax wrote the script. Was this just a mistake that the other animation studio didn't realize that Rei isn't supposed to look at people, or not? Because the problem is, after episode 11, Rei doesn't do anything significant until episode 15. She's barely in episodes 12, 13, and 14. Well, what she does do, she's in the entry plug or something, not socially interacting with people, and I can't really judge from those how much eye contact she's making. So really, for Rei, skips from 11 to 15 is where you can really analyze her eye contact. And I can't tell if it's because the other animation studio messed it up in episode 11 that she's really not supposed to be, or what. But because she doesn't do anything the next couple episodes, then you go to episode 15. The thing is, I think she gets nervous and she doesn't know how to handle anxiety, because she has two scenes in elevators, one with Shinji and one with Asuka, and in each one, even though this is after the episode 11 cutoff point I have, she doesn't look straight at them. And this is because they're standing behind her, and I think it's because it's a really intense emotional conversation and she's now very nervous. So it's that she only looks at things like the Spock eyebrow, she's really interested in them. But it's also she's kind of embarrassed like a toddler and won't look straight at something that's really emotional. And she didn't have many emotional things to talk about before this, but look here, it's the scene where Shinji says, oh wow, you'd be a great mother, and she's not looking straight at him, she's just still looking forwards. But you see, within the same episode, she'll actually turn her head and say goodbye to Asuka when they're leaving the locker room. And I think that's just more of the subtle shift. Maybe they didn't plan this out, and I'm reading too much into it, but I think at least I want you to say whether or not you think the pattern fits. And if it's just something that serendipitously, I think that's a word, serendipitously, happened to happen anyway, I think it really fits. But that's episode 15, but the big point is, episode 11 was just a subtle shift towards this, but I keep building up episode 11 so much, but the central Rei scene is really episode 16, the one against the Angel Leliel. And I don't know if Leliel's going to be in Rebuild, but they should port this scene over to something involving another angel, because this is like one of the central Rei scenes of the entire story. That, again, it's like that whole eye contact thing, but instead of just on a scene level, it's like her entire story arc. of the Spock raising his eyebrow thing. That this is her Spock raising his eyebrow moment for the entire series. That Asuka's standing there yelling, "Oh, Shinji's such an idiot for charging forward into the fight," and haha, now he's got himself into trouble and he's stuck inside, and what an idiot. And Rei looks right at Asuka with a really annoyed face, has enough of it, then walks right up to Asuka. When does Rei initiate conversations? Walks right up to Asuka, looks her in the face, gets in her face, and says, "Tell me, Asuka, do you pilot an Eva just to hear the praise of others?" And, like, Asuka's reaction is, "What the hell?" Rei is yelling, and Masato even has to break them up. That now this is the complete turning point for Rei, that she has walked straight up to Asuka, got in her face, looked right at her, and said a snippy remark to her, a cutting remark to her. So that's really the turning point, when you see she's making eye contact now. Now, of course, then Shinji comes into the hospital after they save him, and their roles are totally reversed now. That Rei is the one who comes in, she looks straight at him multiple times. Asuka's the one hiding in the hallway listening because she's embarrassed, because she can't show that she cares about him because she's embarrassed of how he'll feel too. But so now Rei's making eye contact with them in episode 16. In episode 17, it's another step in the growth of Rei. Shinji and Toji come to her apartment again to drop off some papers, and Shinji goes, "Oh, I'll be nice and clean up some of the trash on her floor." And Rei walks in, looks directly at both Toji then Shinji. And Shinji says, "Oh, I was being nice and cleaning up," and she looks back at him. And then later on, once she finds out that Toji's name file, I can't tell because the animation quality is kind of poor. I think she's looking at Toji in this. It's hard to tell, but next she comes up to the school roof and initiates a conversation with Toji. And, he's the one that's facing away from her, and she's looking at him, trying to sympathize with him, and because she's worried about another person and initiating a conversation. If someone had told you in, like, episode 5 that in episode 17, Rei would be talking to Toji and Hikari would be talking to Asuka, saying he was worried that Rei was trying to steal Toji from her, that would be insane, but it happens. So now suddenly it's gone from Rei's making eye contact all the time, talks to Shinji, goes up to Toji and says that. Now, of course, after the big fight in episode 19, in episode 20, Asuka and Rei are talking in the hospital, and Rei looks right at Asuka, and having a conversation there. But again, because it's something, Rei's concerned about talking to Asuka, I'm a little embarrassed, though, there's that minute-long elevator scene, and Rei starts a conversation with someone else. But, of course, this time she isn't looking at her, so I think now it's a little reversed, that now when it's something really intense, she'll look away in the elevator scenes. Nonetheless, you mentioned, well, do the glasses show up again? The glasses show up in multiple episodes again as a symbol of her relationship with Gendo and how it's fractured, and now her allegiance is subtly shifted to Shinji from Gendo more. Like, after Shinji cleans her apartment and she goes, "Thank you," she's sitting around being really disturbed that, wow, I've never said thank you to anyone in my life, least of all Gendo. And she looks at Gendo's glasses. And, of course, Rei 2, the second Rei clone, dies in episode 23, and the Rei 3 clone gets made, and she walks back into her apartment, finds Gendo's glasses there, and she sees them, and she looks angry because Gendo made her back to life as Rei 3, and she's angry, and she grabs the glasses and crunches them in her hands, and grips them angrily, and starts crying uncontrollably. Now, Rei 3 is more emotional than Rei 2. We just don't have enough time to focus on how she's a little subtly different from Rei 2. Long story short, she's got the whole soul of Lilith back as part was being used in Eva Zero, but I will explain that later, just taking up my word for that now. But the other big thing is, there's only one scene between Kaoru and Rei, and it's really short. The director's cut scene adds a few more lines to it, but Rei is startled to see Kaoru, and basically, she has the soul of Lilith. He's Seilei's version of Rei. He has the soul of Adam. And she just looks at him really worried and with a, "Who the hell are you?" look. Who are you? So she looks straight at Kaoru as well, because he's really grabbed her attention. By this point, she looks at people all the time. And the thing is, off-screen, apparently, she completely clenched the glasses and broke them. because when we first see them in End of Eva, the first scene in Rei's apartment, the shattered glasses are on the floor, and she is completely turned on Gendo. So they really symbolize her allegiance to him and how it slowly erodes. And of course, I'm sorry I'm not using animation, but I want to make this fair use and not get the YouTube people on my case for, this is just educational, this isn't a substitute for watching the series. I want you to whip out these scenes on your DVDs and rewatch them, because I'm pointing them out here with still shots. But, I'm trying to play it safe, because I think this is entirely under fair use. But, last scene where Gendo's sticking his hand into Rei to fuse her with Adam, she looks straight up, because he's really taller than her. She looks up into his face and says, "I'm not your doll," and turns away. So that's the big, part of her body posture is completely turned into a person by that point. Other things you want to notice from that scene are, first off, what's in Rei's apartment besides the bare minimums of life? And it's completely undecorated. Well, she's got lots of medication on top of her microfridge. That's for starters. And she's also got these heavily annotated, the script says they're heavily annotated with stick-it notes, genetics textbooks. And I really don't know why she'd be looking at genetics textbooks. You see them there? Is it that they're supposed to be, I don't know if it's, does she know she's a clone? Obviously she doesn't. At various points they say she knows she's not a clone. So I think it's, are they making her read up on genetics, or is it just that on an unconscious level it really intrigues her? Because in the back of her mind she knows she's a clone, and subconsciously, I don't know. But maybe it's a subtle hint. But I don't think this could be a hint to the audience, because it's so subtle we couldn't notice this. But it's just she reads up on genetics a lot. The thing is, you see her actually reading this in episode 9 when Asuka's putting her shadow over it. You see, a subtle joke is, you have to understand, Gynax are a bunch of big nerds, and nerdy Japanese people like to know English, and they like to know German. I think because, German was the only thing that wasn't banned in World War II because they were allied with them. I've heard explained. But they know functionally a lot of English and a lot of German. That's why, Seele, Nerv, these are German words. The point is, that's a genetics diagram. I know that's I knew when I looked at it that's what my plasmid diagrams in my textbooks look like. But if you actually figure out the text, it's actually a famous German poem of sorts. They're having a joke that anachronistically the pictures don't match the text. But that's like an in-joke. But anyway, getting back to the medication stuff, the big question is, why does she take so much medication? And the manga, I can't find the scan, sorry, but there's a scene in the manga where Ritsuko almost strangles Rei out of anger, but stops because she realized Naoko did that. And it's like Ritsuko implies that Rei physically needs this medication to stay alive and she'll die without it. And I think the inference is that her clone body isn't entirely stable. It makes sense to me that she's a clone, but she needs kind of supplements to keep her body regular because she's a little not entirely stable. And I don't know if it's like cancer or whatever that she'd have with her body growing out of. I don't think so. It's she's a little unstable because she's a clone medically and needs constant medication to stay alive, and that just made sense to me. So the manga reinforced that and actually said she'll die without them. She needs medication to supplement some things. Well, I found that scene for the manga I was talking about. It's Sadamoto's manga, Volume 8, Stage 56. I'm just using some raw Japanese samples here because I don't want to infringe on Carl Horn's nice translation for Viz. It's Volume 8, please go out and buy it. It's a scene where Rei is getting what is said to be a regular medication injection from Ritsuko. And this happens all the time, but Rei mentions, "Oh, you like Gendo too," and this makes Ritsuko fly into a rage and strangle Rei with a stethoscope hacked to death. But she stops when she realizes this is exactly what her mother did. And then Ritsuko gets really embarrassed that she's worried that someone will find out she did this. So she threatens Rei to stay quiet about it and says that, "Oh, remember, you need me to survive, Rei. You depend on me to survive." So she's heavily implying that the medications that Rei receives from Ritsuko are actually really vital to her survival and she needs them. So the manga explains this a bit more fully. But another big point I want to make is Rei's sensory perception. Just because Rei doesn't look directly at things, that's a body posture thing. That doesn't mean she's not paying attention or tuning you out. Socially, maybe she's scared. Maybe she doesn't know what fear is, but maybe she acts on it subconsciously because she experiences fear, just doesn't know how to react to it. So maybe she looks away things because she's anxious, and a combination of also she just says, no, you're supposed to look at things. But she's paying attention all the time. She's not in her own little world. Far from it. First off, I'm not sure if that's because she's Lilith or just because she can hear the sirens first. But in episode 3, when she knows there's an emergency call, like 20 seconds before Shinji hears the siren, maybe that's just because she can hear better. I don't know. But more closely, it's that elevator scene with Shinji, where he says, he's trying to engage her in conversation, and without him bringing it up, she says, I know you were looking at me intently the other day while I was cleaning. And during that whole time she was cleaning, she didn't look directly at him. So she's aware of what's going on around her, just she's paying attention to her peripheral vision. She's really paying attention to her sensory input, she's just not reacting on it. She doesn't know how to react to things. Rei's voice actress in Japan said the way Anno explained it to her was, she isn't like Data from Star Trek, we use that analogy, but she experiences emotions, she just has no idea how to react to emotions. Again, like a Blade Runner replicant, I guess. Not one-for-one correspondence, but it's that thing of, so she is really she's not in her own little world, she's paying attention to everything. Like when they're playing Dance Dance Revolution, notice how she perfectly syncs with Shinji's motions on the first try when Asuka couldn't. And is that a commentary on how there's a connection between Rei and Shinji, like she's almost a lost sister to him of sorts? I don't know. It might be that she's just got really good reflexes as well. She's not some bumbling autistic person. She pays attention to everything she sees and hears, is actually physically very acute in her movements, like when she snaps that card out of Shinji's hand, remember that? She just doesn't react to it that much. But notice in episode 11, she's the first one to hear Hyuga in the truck warning that an angel is coming. And I think that's just, unlike the episode 3 thing, that's just she pays attention a lot better. Now, there's another problem with that of, also when they're going through the tunnels in episode 11, that Rei seems to always know the right way to go. Is that supernatural sense of direction, or is it just she pays close attention when she goes in and out of Nerve HQ and knows what the right way to go is because she remembers it very well? I'm not sure. And also, finally, when they all fall out of that air duct in episode 11, well, obviously Shinji and Asuka were fighting, so they fell right on top of each other, but she very neatly lands right on her feet, very deftly. So, as you can see, just because Rei doesn't look at people doesn't mean she's off in her own little world and is half here. She actually pays attention to everything she sees and hears. She just doesn't look straight at you. Not just the way her head is tilting, she'll look somewhere else, but, she'll exercise her peripheral vision, just doesn't know how to react to it. So she's aware of everything going on around her. I don't think it's not necessarily up to a supernatural level. I think we might never know if is it supposed to be supernatural or not. It's just she's really paying attention. And she can physically move very well. So even though she's the one huddled in a corner not looking at you, she could be doing somersaults and having a running conversation looking at you. She just doesn't. Not because she can't, because she won't. And I think that's an important thing to remember, that she's not just some doll plot there. She just doesn't know how to react to things. And as you can see, she really wasn't looking at people when she started, and by the end she's initiating conversations with even Toji and looking straight at people when she's concerned with them. And it's more pronounced earlier in the series when she will only, like that scene with Asuka, she will only look when really, really pressed. Now, I am going to have to split this into a couple of videos because it ran really long, but I think it was worth saying. And it's really because it's one of the major characters. And I know you have a lot of other major unresolved questions, but I'll have to answer those in some other videos. So I'm going to load this up now, but really, Doug and all the Isagoi guys, really, thanks for trying to do something like this. I haven't seen anything like this in quite some time, but look, we're having a discussion about the series based on fact and what we can observe in the series, supported by evidence, and not our own crackpot theory, much less the sentiment that, well, my interpretation of the series is more important than Hideaki Anno's. I want to know what Hideaki Anno meant by these scenes and meant with the series, and I don't, if it's not supposed to be in there, that's just a fan applying their own interpretation, which more often than not tends to be, Rei wants to have sex with me in my perfect alternate reality. Come on, guys, that's what we've been doing for the past 12 years, and look where it's gotten us. So really, why did you guys do this Isekoi discussion thing if not that you feel that it hasn't been discussed before? Really, thanks for doing this. So I really want to get into more about this, oh crap, the music is starting. Well, in that case, I'm pleased to meet you, and I hope you guessed my name. What's puzzling you is the nature of it.